This is Create the Next from Pro CFO Partners, where every week we explore strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help today's businesses put their financial picture in context.
Welcome back to Create the Next. I'm Chris Mitliff, and I'm joined today with the return of my good friend, Jeff Franklin. And Jeff, it's great to have you back on the show. Always appreciate your expert insights and advice. And today is a big one because we're talking about inflation, which is on everybody's mind, whether I'm a business who offers something or a consumer who's buying something. And let's break it down a little bit. First of all, welcome. And what are you seeing out there? I don't know. What's the mood? Are people in panic? Are people in hysteria? Is it really shifting a lot of things that nobody expected, or just kind of, or are people taking it in stride because they've made contingency plans and this is just part of business? How's it going out there?
Well, first of all, it's great to see you again, and it's great to be back. I think it's a little crazy out there. So I think when we started to first hit the definition of inflation, it started with we know we've had supply chain issues, very quickly in the automobile industry, where you couldn't get a new car, or you had to wait months to get a new car, and the price of used cars went very high, skyrocketed. And I think their initial reaction was, well, if I'm not going to get a new car, it's really not going to affect me. Well, I think you can throw all that out the window right now. The price of raw materials has gone up, wages have gone up. They have created increases in prices. The government has flooded the streets with some money. Many people who received these stimulus checks have saved that money and are now coming out as the economy is starting to come back and people are going back to work. They want to spend the money, and they've created a demand that's greater than supply, and therefore prices have just gone up to meet that demand. So
what is a business to do? We haven't been in a space of high inflation in some time, so I think a lot of folks are strategically unprepared for it. But what do we do? Just raise prices and hope for the best, or how do we kind of weather this?
Well, I think there are many different components of where a business, the challenges that a business has during a time of inflation. Basically, you've got workforce issues in terms of retaining employees. You have profitability issues. You have cash flow issues. Some companies may even have issues of in the sense of a going concern. Will they be in business in 12 months? It just put there's a lot of risk in business these days. There's a lot of uncertainty. I think there are a bunch of areas that businesses can focus on. I think number one is probably its pricing model. Take a look at its current price structure, make sure it is enough to cover the cost of what they're selling or producing. Maybe go through the list of contracts that they have or their customer base and determine if in fact they've got very low producing or low performing contracts, in which case maybe it's time to either go to weed those out or better to renegotiate and see if they can pick up some additional revenues. I think what's happening in the world right now is everybody's raising prices. So I don't think you need to be afraid to do so, though you have to be smart when you do so. But I think you should analyze your price structure in terms of possibly raising.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think you're right. I think, first of all, tell me if you agree, I think a lot of businesses are chronically underpricing what they sell. I think that there's a fearfulness around raising prices that isn't necessarily justified by the marketplace. Customers understand the value of something. And there's been lots of studies about, if you offer a large and a small, people are more likely to buy the large. But if you offer a large, medium, and small, people will go with the medium because they don't know where the value is. So I think this could be an opportunity to look at your value differently, rather than just, what's your cost of goods and how are you going to put X% of margin on that. I'm wondering if you feel like this is a time of innovation, or is this a time to hunker down?
I actually think it's a time for innovation. but to be also smart. So there are, it's a competitive world out there. So you have a lot of competitors depending upon what kind of business you're in. You've got to be smart in terms of how your price, what your price structure is. So take a transportation company, for instance, that goes out and does transportation services. Well, the cost of oil has created a tremendous surge in gas prices. You've got to pass that along to a customer, and I don't think anybody would be afraid to, or should be afraid to do so, because I think customers would understand why it's coming. As long as you bring it back down, or you reduce it or eliminate it rather, if and when prices come back down. So I think those are kind of some issues that you could look at.
That's really interesting. Do you feel like it's good to communicate that with customers? Look, folks, we've got a temporary price increase. We plan to come back down when circumstances allow, or is that a little bit too transparent? How should I be connecting with my customers in this space?
I think it's important to communicate with them. I think all businesses are actually dealing with this in some degree, and they all understand, and they're probably all having the same internal discussions about their businesses, and thinking, how do they pass along some of the increased costs to their customers. So I think you would find no one, look, they're not going to be happy, but they'll be receptive.
It's tough. We're coming out of a couple of years of COVID, and that was weird and changed business and really, was a smack in the face for a lot of us. And now we have kind of this abrupt inflation. We've talked before, Hale and I, Nelson and I, some others on the team at ProCFO Partners have talked before about how the pandemic was in some ways an accelerator. If you had issues, they were just really brought in stark relief. At the same time, if you were well adjusted and an innovative sort of company that could quickly pivot or sort of make new ways of doing things, that strength was also sort of put into focus. What is this? Is this an accelerator? Is this a deterrent? Is this a stumbling block? Who's going to come out on the other side of this? Those that are well organized, or those that have great products, or those that get lucky? What do you think is
I think it's a well organized company and somebody with a focus to become well organized. I mean, this is an opportunity to go through your entire cost structure, go through your trial balance, take a look at every single line item, and weed out the expenses that aren't critical to the business. Okay, to reposition yourself in a world that you can continue to go forward and employ people, and eventually when it all comes out, at the end of it, that you'll prosper. I mean, you've got probably expenses you don't need. For instance, right now, maybe not the time to spend a lot of money on travel and entertainment. Okay. Maybe there's a way to review your P&L, and, perhaps you're a company that outsourced some of the work. Well, maybe it's time to possibly bring some of those functions internally, if you can, back in-house, where you can utilize less expensive people to do so, and also keep your workforce, stable.
I also feel like this is a smart time to look at some of those fractional solutions. Marketing consultant, a fractional CFO, like we do at ProCFO Partners, even business advisors, or those that can fill a role without becoming huge overhead. Do you agree? Is that a smart thing to do these days?
Yeah, well, I believe it's always the right time for a fractional CFO. And what we do is we provide a strategic view to help the business. We'll look at it beyond the numbers, look at the structure, try and get an understanding of what the business is and what the goals and strategies of the customer is, and try and tailor a solution to put them on that path. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. But I think this is a time when you want to call in as many people to help you that if you're struggling. Okay. It's also an opportunity. These types of challenges create opportunities in the world where your competitors are dealing with the same thing you are. Okay. Yeah. So, competitors have to spend more money for product, or they have to deal with potentially raising rates. They have to deal with employee retention issues, and sometimes some of these challenges can produce opportunities to you as a business who perhaps there's an acquisition down the line, perhaps there's a merger or a joint venture. As these small companies can't afford perhaps the infrastructure to stay on their own anymore, especially with things changing and the cost of everything going up. It may be a good opportunity to all of a sudden have some, do some kind of a business arrangement.
Now that's really interesting because, it's in times like these that well-positioned, as you pointed out, and smart companies find the opportunities and can take advantage of unprecedented situations. And so when the dust sort of settles, you're in a new space. I think that's really interesting. Talk to me before we go about my vendor relationships and some of the things that are sort of that the other dominoes around me, because they're struggling too. I feel like I have little leverage to try to renegotiate some contracts to make it easier on me because everything for them is hard. How can I got only so many levers I can pull, pricing being one of them and probably the smartest one. Are there other things I can do realistically to sort of manage my expenses and my cash flow health?
Well, I think so. So again, you've got to review every one of your expenses and put yourself in a better cash flow position. I think it's a very important in this world to stay on top of your receivables. Make sure your customers are paying. Don't lose sight of the fact that there's nothing wrong with sending out a statement or a friendly reminder to pay. You have terms with clients. Try and hold them to the terms. I mean, it may be if things are really tight, you have options that, available to you. Maybe something to offer a prompt payment discount to generate a little bit quicker cash coming in. I also think to that, as a side note to that, it's probably a good idea to go get whether it be a credit line or a credit facility with a bank or a financial institution, if they're available to you, just to have some working capital in the back pocket in case you need it. Because, you're going to hit some speed bumps. Businesses always do.
What are you seeing as far as banking relationships go in this sort of era of inflation? Are banks holding tight, or are they feeling like let's do our best to invest in our smart partners here?
Well, I've done two bank deals for two clients over the past in less than a year. One as recently as last month, and I have found that the banks have money and they're willing to lend to the right opportunity. So they're very focused on, aside from debt service, they're focused on profitability of the company for a couple of years prior to the ask. So I think that's the challenge that companies will have. Anybody who's been on the borderline in terms of profitability may have to jump through a little bit more hoops, but there's money out there. And I think there's even with the interest rates going up, the money it's good, it's cheap, and it can help a lot of companies.
But I imagine, as always, the banks want your ducks to be in a row. So as you said, this is a great time to really sort of scrutinize all aspects of your line items. Yeah. That will impress a banking relationship. They'll say, oh, I see you're doing all the things you can do. If I'm a company that's been a little flat-footed with that stuff, and a lot of small and mid-market businesses are, this is a good time for me to sort of really prioritize that.
Yeah, you've got to really delve into the numbers in terms of what your projections are going to be and make them realistic. And you've got to kind of don't lose sight of where you've been, but your projections going forward, if you're able to implement all the changes that you suggest you will go a long way to helping you find that right financial partner.
Jeff Franklin.
And also give you it'll allow you to sleep at night as well, because you'll have a little bit of comfort that, I'm going to make it.
That's huge. And I'm so glad that you're bringing us back to a point of sort of optimism is if you're doing, inertia and action are really important. So if you're doing something in this atmosphere that we feel so little control over, inflation, there's so many different parts and pieces. If you're doing something, it can really help a person feel like, okay, I'm taking the right actions. And that does bring a lot of peace of mind, which is an important part of the, I guess, cultural health of leadership.
Yeah, look. I mean, it's a challenging time, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely, there always is, right, man?
Yeah.
Jeff Franklin from Pro CFO Partners. So great to see you again. So great to hear your take on these important issues. And thanks for the advice and insights today. I think, I hope our listeners, our leadership, listeners in leadership have been sort of taking notes and thinking about, okay, so where might I have a couple screws that I need to tighten down to make things a little easier as we get through this? Because we will get through this, as we have proven with resilience, or as Hawley likes to say, transformation. But it's another obstacle to overcome, and sometimes that's business, but we'll get there.
Thanks for having me.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Pro CFO Partners, Jeff Franklin. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Visit ProCFOPartners.com for more strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help you put your business's financial picture in context.